It was a chilly Halloween night, the air thick with the faint scent of fallen leaves and damp earth. A group of friends, all dressed in costumes and fueled by laughter and excitement, had set out to collect as much candy as possible. Rumor had it that the next neighborhood over was giving out the best treats, so they decided to take a shortcut through the woods. Flashlights in hand, they joked and chatted, unaware of the unsettling danger waiting just ahead. The trees loomed above, casting shadows that flickered with each step. As the group moved deeper, the usual banter faded, replaced by the whisper of leaves underfoot and the occasional snap of a twig. One of them, nervously glancing around, broke the silence. "Did anyone else hear that?" he whispered, clutching his flashlight a little tighter. The others paused, sweeping their lights across the twisted trunks and fallen branches, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. They chuckled nervously and pressed on, though now their steps were cautious, their voices hushed. Suddenly, a low rustling sound echoed from behind them. Startled, they turned as one, only to see two figures standing silently in the distance. The men were dressed in black, barely distinguishable from the shadows of the trees. Panic surged as the group stood frozen, the strangers' faces concealed in the darkness. Without a word, the friends turned and began to run the men's footsteps, pounding behind them, matching their pace with disturbing ease. Hearts racing, they finally broke out of the woods and stumbled into the glow of the nearby neighborhood streetlights. Turning back, they saw nothing. The men had vanished, leaving only the oppressive silence of the woods in their wake. The friends never spoke of it again, but each time Halloween came around, they would catch each other's eye and remember that night. And they would wonder, were the men still there, lurking just beyond the trees, waiting for their next victim? College Halloween parties were legendary. A chaotic blend of outrageous costumes, loud music, and endless drinks. The main character, a young woman excited for the night ahead, had joined her friends at the biggest party on campus. The air was thick with the smell of alcohol and the buzz of excitement as people in all manner of costumes danced and laughed under the dim lights. She had come as a classic witch, her black dress swishing as she moved through the crowd, exchanging smiles and waves with familiar faces. But soon she noticed a stranger, a man in a nondescript costume, his gaze unsettlingly focused on her. He hovered close, his presence growing more unnerving as the night wore on. She nudged her friend. "That guy's a creep," she muttered, her unease growing with each minute. Her friend nodded, a slight frown forming as she too noticed his unnaturally intense stare. Finally he approached, his voice smooth yet cold. I'm Name," he said, his gaze unwavering. "Where are you headed after the party?" She felt a chill as he spoke, his voice laced with something dark, something that made her instinctively want to move away. Politely excusing herself, she slipped through the crowd, her heart racing. Outside, the cool night air did little to ease her nerves as she hurried along the dimly lit streets, glancing back over her shoulder with every few steps. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw him again, standing under a street lamp further down the block, his gaze fixed intently on her. She felt trapped, her pulse pounding as she moved quickly down an alley, cutting through yards in her rush to escape. Only when she was safely inside her dorm did she allow herself to breathe. But the image of his unblinking eyes haunted her long after Halloween ended. Instincts, she realized, were there for a reason. Halloween had always been an eagerly awaited night in the small, close-knit town. Children dressed as ghosts, vampires, and superheroes dashed from house to house, collecting treats and trying to outdo one another with their costumes. In this town, however, there was one house that kids rarely approached, belonging to an elderly woman known for her unsettling demeanor and bizarre appearance. She was notorious for her dark clothes and the thick scarves she wrapped around her neck, no matter the season. The neighborhood children would often dare each other to knock on her door, claiming she was a witch who collected children's souls. This year, a group of cousins had taken it upon themselves to finally approach her door. "I dare you to knock on her door!" one of the older cousins whispered, his eyes glinting with mischief. Reluctantly, the youngest, a boy of about 8, moved up the steps, trembling as he raised his hand to knock. The door creaked open before his knuckles could meet the wood, and there she stood, her silhouette filling the doorway. Her eyes glinted in the dim porch light, and a twisted smile played on her lips. To their horror, She held a human head in her hands. The children screamed, stumbling backward, tripping over each other in their scramble to escape. The woman's laughter echoed after them as they fled down the street, her voice chilling in its delight. When they finally reached the safety of their aunt's house, breathless and wide-eyed, they tried to explain what they had seen, but the adults laughed it off as a Halloween prank. Days later, rumors began to circulate that a young child from the next town had gone missing, last seen wandering the streets on Halloween night. The cousins shivered, the memory of the woman's twisted grin and the lifelike prop she held haunting their dreams. They never dared go near her house again, forever wary of the dark secrets that lurked in the town's shadows. On Halloween night, the streets were alive with children darting from house to house, their laughter ringing through the crisp night air. An 8-year-old boy and his older sister, hand in hand, were making their rounds, filling their bags with candy. The night was perfect, with just the right amount of spooky thrill as they moved from one decorated porch to the next. They were nearly done when a large old van rolled to a stop beside them. The driver, an unkempt man with a leering grin, leaned out, his eyes fixed on the boy's sister. "Are you sure you don't need a ride?" he asked, his voice oily and far too friendly. The boy instinctively moved closer to his sister, sensing the danger in the man's tone. The sister, her expression stiff, shook her head and pulled her brother away, quickening their pace. As they continued down the street, they noticed the van following them, its engine rumbling ominously in the otherwise quiet night. Every time they turned a corner, it reappeared, idling just a few feet behind them. Fear took over and the siblings broke into a run, their candy bags forgotten as they sprinted towards home. The van accelerated, keeping pace, until they reached their driveway, where they burst through the door, slamming it shut behind them. Peeking through the curtains, they watched as the man stepped out of the van, his eyes scanning the house as though searching for a way in. Just then their father appeared at the window, his face stern, and stared the man down. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man returned to his van, shooting one last unsettling look at the house before driving away. The siblings clutched each other tightly, a silent understanding passing between them. They had narrowly escaped something truly terrifying. In a dimly lit room, the narrator sits alone, surrounded by the flickering glow of candles casting eerie shadows across the walls. A knowing smile plays on their lips as they begin their closing remarks, the weight of each story hanging in the silence. "Halloween," they murmur, their voice soft and haunting, "is a night of tricks, treats, and tales that remind us of the darkness lurking just out of sight. On this night we encounter ghosts, monsters, and creatures that feed on our fears." They lean forward, their eyes gleaming as they speak, drawing the audience in. But remember, some fears aren't just stories. Sometimes the real horror hides behind a friendly smile or a silent chase through the woods. Sometimes the monsters are real. The room falls silent, the words lingering in the air like the final breath before a scream. As the candlelight flickers and dies, the narrator leaves the audience with a final chilling line, a whisper that hangs in the dark. "This Halloween, stay close, stay safe, and beware the shadows."